Well, life isn't always race engines and hot rod Mini Coopers. Here's a case in point. This is our friend's Scion XD. I'll dig up some videos I did of this a few years back when I had to put a water pump on it for her, and it was nightmarish. But here it was making a rattly noise and hard to start, and one thing led to another. I discovered the timing chain had pummeled its way through the guides and such, and it was really overdue for service. So fully depreciated car, you know, dinged up here and there from living on a dirt road, what have you, 110, 15,000 miles, something. You know, the cost of repair one of these just isn't worth it. You take this to a real shop, say a real shop, and you know, they want, the car just isn't worth it. It's very easy to have a $3,500 car cost you $5,500 to repair, and you just burned your money. So luckily my friend knows someone like me who works at home and can take our time here and painstakingly get at the problem. And here we are, the timing cover. It is possible to do these in the car. There's some stuff on here on YouTube about Corollas and such that use this common DUAL VVTI engine, variable valve timing on both cams. And things look really good for how much the chain moved around. It's not in time anymore. The cams, I've got it top dead center. One cam is obviously not on center, and it was running like that. Kind of had no oomph. Sounded okay once I put a tensioner in it where it was broken. But here we are. I've got everything. I mean, I had to move the alternator out of the way. There's a lower water pump and such, and then very carefully prying away. This engine seems to use no gaskets in most places. And so I think I'm at the point here where we can almost, let me see if I can do this left-handed, if it's disconnected enough for us to have a look. See some bits, and there's parts of the of the guide rail in there, I'm sure of it. I think I better stop with the one-handed attempt here and take it apart carefully. Okay, fast forward a couple of days to a coolish morning out here under our shade tree with our little Scion project. Let's share what we found since we set up such a cliffhanger. Yeah, that timing cover, not that easy to remove. They end up, thank you Toyota, they end up putting the thermostat housing way down here underneath this hideous alternator bracket. There's two hoses with these pinch clamps that are impossible to remove out of the way entirely. You're just fumbling around with a pair of pliers in between things. Thanks a lot, Toyota. It just makes no sense at all. Why put a thermostat and all of its associated bits and hoses in between your air conditioner and your alternator and the associated brackets? Nightmare. Nightmare. You take a car that could have a nice long life and you create a maintenance cost that puts it in the junkyard. But anyway, we managed to get it apart. Nice casting. The rest of it came apart pretty nicely, and we have to say, very little destruction given how the upper guide rail looked. Here's a chance to show the destruction that we found. Here's the upper guide rail that had its pad removed and its overhanging rail chewed up from the inside, almost cut clean through by the chain. Here's what a new one looks like. It has this entire pad, and as a result, this piece was spit off. And look at that, ingested. See if we can get a better background. See the imprint of the timing chain in there? This thing went right through on one of the gears or something, and that couldn't have been good. This could have contributed mightily to our feeling that we were off a tooth or so, the way this ran when we got it started. The original crank sprocket, you know, it's ground down to points here. If you look at this closely, these are probably not, they're probably off-center ellipticals. But really, we have to say on the inside, given how this looked, we thought it would be worse. And this was interesting, again, to have the chain having chewed its way through that. And in fact, there's a piece embedded in the chain still. I haven't pried out. Our chain has the same markings as the replacement one here. You got kind of the other ones draped up on our stand. And amazingly, you know, no obvious stretch, no obvious damage, despite having cut its way through a pretty hefty steel guide on the back side. Oh, one last thing to show before we start putting it together. Interesting what broke here, and the way this all started. This is over here, this in better light. There's a little clip that's supposed to hold these in the closed position, and you turn the engine backwards and it relieves pressure and pops it out. But look at the casting here. This thing, we talked about the chain having chewed something up. That right there, where my thumbnail is a break. It's a crack through this thing. So this whole arm was pried backward. This was very difficult to remove from its bore because of this damage, making it a much tighter fit. So that's where it all started. I replaced this with a new one, thinking, well, if we're really lucky. That's why it was making a lot of noise and rattling. But I think that having ingested this piece, it skipped a tooth and made it very difficult to start. And as I said, when it did, I drove it and it just felt like it was lacking. So I guessed it had skipped and was out of time just slightly. So now we'll figure out, do some careful comparisons, figure out the timing, maybe get back on YouTube and look at where the dots go just to confirm on this DUAL VVTI Toyota engine.